Sahana vavatu, Sahanau bhunaktu, Sahaviryam karavavahai, Tejasvina vadhitamastu, Ma vidyushavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Gananam Tva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajyam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashrinvan Tubhiseda Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Shanno Mitra Shamvarunaha Shanno Bhavatvaryama Shanna Indro Brahaspadi Shanno Vishnurukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayu Tumeva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahma Vadishyami Ridam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmamavatu Tatvaktaramavatu Avatu Mam Avatu Vaktaram. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukhadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Tundvaditam Gaganasadrisham Tattvamasyadi Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavaditam Trigunarahitam Satgurum Tam Namami. Bhavaditam Trigunarahitam Satgurum Tam Namami. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Atma Tvam Girijamadi Sahajara Prana Shariram Graham Pujate Vishayo Babhogarajana Nidra Samadhistidhi Sancharah Padayo Pradekshina Vidhi Stotrani Sarva Giro Yatyat Karma Karomi Tattadakhilam Shambho Tavaradhanam. Yatyat Karma Karomi Tattadakhilam Shambho Tavaradhanam. So from today onwards, for another 3 days, we shall be reflecting upon this great sage of India, his words and his works. He is known as Maharshi Ramana or Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. Bhagavan means he is equivalent to God. Maharshi means he is the great seer. Mahancha Rishishcha. Mahan means great. Rishi means a seer. He could see things without much analysis and thinking. That's why he is called Maharshi. So he is equivalent to God. He is a great seer. And he is also called Ramana. Ramana because one who revels in himself. One who is comfortable, happy with oneself. He is called a Ramana. Rama, Ramana, Krishna. These words indicate one who is comfortable, happy with oneself. So these are the three components of his name. And Maharshi, for Maharshi, his life and his teachings were the same. In fact, his life was his teaching. Most of the people, there is a gap between what they teach and what they live or what they think. So here is a perfect integrity or integration, unity between what he thought, what he said, and how he lived. That is what makes Ramana a great person. So, from my standpoint and my reading, I feel that Ramana was one of the greatest mystics of the 20th century, greatest mystics of the world. Of course, coming from India, I take Ramana, Ramakrishna, and Aurobindo. These were the great mystics of India. Aurobindo lived in Pondicherry. Ramana lived in Tiruvannamalai, just 100 kilometers distance between Pondicherry and Tiruvannamalai. And Ramakrishna, of course, lived in the 19th century. Just for 50 years he lived in the mortal frame, and he died of cancer. Ramakrishna died of cancer. So too Ramana died of cancer. Aurobindo had a peaceful death. When a Mahatma drops his physical body, we don't call it death. We say it is samadhi. Samadhi means abiding in the self. That's the meaning of samadhi. Abiding in your natural self. Abiding in truth. Living in God consciousness. The literal meaning of samadhi is samadhi. Even-mindedness. That's the literal meaning of samadhi. Even-mindedness. Balanced mind. But its mystic meaning is one who lives in his own spiritual center. One who is centered is the meaning of samadhi. So we don't say Ramana died. We say Ramana attained samadhi. Ramakrishna attained samadhi. Sometimes we also say Mahasamadhi. The difference between a Mahasamadhi and samadhi is what you enjoy while you are living, embodied state. What you enjoy is called samadhi. And what you enjoyed in a disembodied state is called Mahasamadhi. So Ramana, when he dropped his mortal body, he attained Mahasamadhi. And while he was in an embodied state, while he was living in the body, whatever he has attained is called samadhi. Practically, there is not much difference, except a semantic difference. There is no practical difference. So, we are going to reflect upon Maharshi's teachings and Maharshi's life. Bhagavan, Ramana, Maharshi. He lived for 71 years. He walked on this planet, breathed on this planet for 75 years. 71 years, not 75. 71. He was born in 1879, the month of December. 1879, that means the 19th century. And he died in 1950, 14th of April. So that makes 71 years. And of these 71 years, 54 years he lived in one place. 54 years he lived in perfect samadhi. We call it Ananda Shayanam, in eternal repose. 54 years he lived in that state of eternal repose, doing nothing. He was a perfect example of non-action. That is slightly different from inaction. It is not inaction. The inaction is an interesting word. Inaction can mean, if you break the compound, it can be inaction also. Inaction can mean inaction. So, we can say Maharshi is a perfect example of non-action or eternal repose, which in Sanskrit we call Ananda Shayanam. It's a very interesting concept, that you are eternally resting. In a state of total restfulness, he lived. He is also, that state can also be called Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra means awareful sleep. Meaning you are sleeping all the time, but awareful asleep. The technical meaning of sleep is a state of consciousness where there are no agitations, worries. That is called state of sleep. Like when you go to sleep, how do you experience that sleep? A state of consciousness where there is no disturbance, no thought agitations. No thought agitation. So it's a state free from reaction. Thought is a reaction. Reaction to sensations, we have seen that. So he was free. So he lived 54 years, can you imagine? 54 years he lived like that, in one place. And that is Maharshi's greatness. So as I told, he was born in 1879, December. And he had a good education also. Not that he was an illiterate person. Some of the mystics are totally illiterate. Because illiteracy is often a block. And they had a different kind of literacy. A direct way of learning. Somehow or other they mastered it. So Maharshi was educated. He was educated in an American missionary school to boot. Not in an Indian Sanskrit school. He was educated in American missionary school. He was born in the southernmost state of India called Tamil Nadu, where people speak Tamil. He was born in a place called Madurai. Madurai, some of you know, is famous for the temple, Mathura Meenakshi. Mathura Meenakshi is a temple dedicated to female energy, female power. Meenakshi means one whose eyes are like fish eyes, constantly moving, alert, and fish never closes its eyes. It's always open. So fish is an example for alertness. Always alive and alert. That's the meaning of a fish. So Mathura Meenakshi. So this city is a temple city, well known for this female deity, Meenakshi. So we have many deities like Meenakshi, Kamakshi, Vishalakshi. Meenakshi means one whose eyes like a fish. Kamakshi means lustful eyes. A deity dedicated to lust, Kamakshi. And then Vishalakshi means one who got very large lotus-like eyes. Vishalakshi, Kamakshi, Meenakshi. And we have very famous temples like this. Vishalakshi temple is in Madhya Pradesh. Kamakshi temple is in Tamil Nadu again. And there is another Kamakshi temple in Assam, north east of India. So Maharshi was born in the city, Madurai. And he studied in American missionary school up to the standard of 8. And his father was a lawyer. So he was born in a good family also. His father was a lawyer, a pleader. In India we call them pleaders, one who pleads on behalf of their clients. So, and his father was a Ajanabahu, a tall, towering, imposing, formidable personality. And Ramana, this boy, looked up to his father. His father was God for him. Because he was so powerful, he was so dominating, he was so paternalistic. So our concept of God is often always on those lines. So he looked upon his father with great fear, reverence, and his father dominated the household. Ramana had a brother and a very timid mother. Very timid. Because in front of this giant of a person, what else can she? She is very timid. So this is the environment in which Ramana grew up. Then suddenly, and he was secure, and his father took care of the family. And suddenly, when Ramana was 16, his father died. It was totally unexpected. And that was a crisis in Ramana's life. When he came back from school that day, what does he find? What he finds is that his father's body is lying prostrate on the main hall of the house, and a white linen covering his body. And the father was not breathing, not shouting, not screaming, not asking questions, and he was totally inert. So Maharshi couldn't take this, couldn't accept this, couldn't understand what was happening. Because till that day he was so happy, he was so protected. And suddenly he found this huge tree, banyan tree, is felled and fallen. And he couldn't believe his eyes. What happened to my father? Where has he gone? What is the difference between my father and this body? Because his body is inert. It doesn't breathe, it has no expression. My father was very expressive, very dominant, very powerful. What happened? Where has he gone? And what is the difference between my father and this thing which is lying here? These kind of thoughts overwhelmed Maharshi. 16-year-old boy. Very playful, very athletic, very studious. But this incident impacted on him in such a deep level that he got lost in the thought of his father. It possessed him, that thought. Where is my father? What has happened to him? There was no other question in his mind thereafter. That sight was so stunning for him, so incomprehensible for Ramana. He couldn't make sense of that experience. Most of us make sense, for some explanation he has dead and gone. Or he has gone and joined the stars. Or he has just gone on a long journey. Or he is somewhere else. Some explanation is given and you are satisfied. By the time your mind get distracted, you feel hungry, your friends come. So you forget. But Ramana wasn't like that. This left such a deep impression on him. And he couldn't get out of that feeling. Where is my father? Where has he gone? And he also wanted to know, what is this? What is this experience called death? So people said his mother was crying, brother was crying, relatives were there, all of them were crying, and all of them were saying he's died and died and died. So he wanted to know what is death. So when all the ceremonies were over, India we have long ceremonies for the dead, departed soul. Because we believe the soul hangs around for some time. Therefore we had to give him a send-off by a certain ritual. So there is elaborate rituals. So when the rituals, especially in the Brahmin, Ramana was a Brahmin boy. Especially in the Brahmin family, there are elaborate rituals. So after when the rituals are over, Ramana still was in this thought. What is death? Where has my father gone? He was not able to get out of that thought. He was forced to go to school, but in the classroom he was thinking about his father. Where is he? What has happened to him? What is death? And he no more interested in playing with his friends. He was a very athletic boy, but he no more found any interest in play. He no more found any interest in studies. He no more wanted to go to school. He was transfixed with this experience. He is not able to get out of that. So one day all the crowd have gone. They came crying, they left laughing maybe, which is the way of the world. So the crowd have left. The house is empty. The father's dominant presence was not there. So, and Ramana didn't want to go to school. So one day, he just lied on the ground, stretched himself, and then he imagined that he is dead, like his father, conscious dying. So he just lied on the ground, stretched himself, and then he sincerely believed or imagined that he is dead. He drops his body. That is what he did. Just as his father dropped his body and left without telling anybody, without any advance notice. Similarly, he also lied on the ground, prostrate, and then he imagined very powerfully. And imagination can be very, 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 very gripping and powerful, overwhelming. So he just imagined, or he just felt, or he just simply died, which we call conscious death. And Ramana Maharshi never came out of that state thereafter. He lived for the rest of his life in that state. You may give a neurobiological explanation or a psychological explanation or this explanation, that explanation. Apart from this explanation, it was so real for Maharshi that he felt he has no body, that he felt he is not living in this body. So he was in a deep state of repose. He attained samadhi. Just there. So people attain samadhi in different contexts. There is a story that somebody was carrying water in a pitcher, earthen pitcher, and he almost reached his home, because for carrying water he has to come down the hill and take water from the lake, and he has to climb up the hill maybe a kilometer. It's very strenuous, hard, and he almost reached the house. Then this pot hit on something, or he hit on something, and the pot fell off his head and it broke and all the water gone. And when he saw the shards of the broken pot, it says he gained enlightenment, because he felt his ego is shattered. All the efforts have no more effort. So he felt a symbolic experience of the shattering of the ego, and he gained enlightenment. That does not mean anybody breaking his pot will gain enlightenment. Because this is the problem with the education. What somebody successfully experienced become a repeated practice. And then it become a burden, a bondage, an imposition. You will not be able to repeat the same experience by doing the same thing. So education sometimes become an imposition and a constricted experience because it is only a repetition of what has happened in the past. So breaking the pot and then gaining enlightenment. Or the Sikh religion, you must have heard about the Sikh religion. Not S-I-C, but S-I-K-H. Sikh. Sikh is a corrupted form of Shishya in Sanskrit. Shishya means a disciple who has got discipline. So those who follow the Sikh religion are disciples of their Guru. Their Guru is Guru Nanak. So Guru Nanak was the expounder of the Sikh religion. They follow almost the principles of Hinduism, except a few details. So Guru Nanak attained samadhi in a grocery shop. How is that? How can you attain samadhi in a grocery shop? Because he was an assistant in a grocery shop. He also was not that educated because he was born in the 5th century, 15th century or 16th century of India. So he was assistant in a grocery shop. His family was very poor. And then he was weighing grain in a balance. And he has to count how much is the grain. So he said 1 kilo, 2 kilos, 3 kilo, 4. So he was counting that. And when it came to 13, in Hindi, the word for 13 is tera. Tera. Tera can also mean yours. Tera can mean yours. So when it came to the word Tera, his mind went off some other direction. Tera means he felt, I am God's, I am yours. Don't ask me how did he make that connection. Because these mystic people make strange connections. So the moment he uttered the word Tera, yours. Tera can mean 13 as well as yours. 13 here in your culture is a very dangerous number, isn't it? So, but there, 13 is, it has got this meaning also. Yours. He uttered that word and he attained samadhi, it is said. Guru Nanak attained samadhi. So these insignificant instances like this or happenings like this can pitchfork a good sadhaka, a real seeker, he can be pushed into that dimension. You don't know when it happens, why it happened. There is no explanation for all those things. But the truth is, it happened. So here Ramana, he lies on the ground and he experienced a kind of rigor mortis, as they say. He felt that he is getting out of the body is evaporated, our body is floating around, he is free, his consciousness is free. So he got that deep mystic experience of repose or freedom from his limitations of the body, mind, memory. So I would say from that day onwards for 54 years, so after this experience, which Ramana couldn't explain, he lost interest in everything. So his parents, his brother pushed him to go to the school, but he wouldn't like to go. So one day he took some money from his brother's pocket, maybe 5 rupees or 10 rupees, and then he left home. He simply left home without letting anybody without saying bye to anybody, he simply left. And then he left a note saying that, don't search for me. Don't try to find me out, because I am in search of my Father. Sometimes these crises helps you to take an about turn in life and to ask fundamental questions. So I am in search of my Father. Of course, he might or might not have distinguished between his father and the other father, or what did he mean by his father. It is the spirit of his father or the something else of his father. He might not have been clear about all those things, because you are hardly 16 years old. But he knew that I must understand the mystery of death. Not just intellectually, but deeply. Deeply I must know what it means to die. We all are running away from death, we are afraid of dying. But here is a boy who wants to confront death. And experientially, that's what he wants. So he leaves home. In all great masters' life, you find they leave home. They leave home, they leave their associations, and they spend long years in seclusion sometime, or in the forest, or undergoing austerities. So Ramana Maharshi leaves home and he takes a train. So he has some idea about where he has to go. There is a physical, geographical location where he wanted to go. In all the spiritual seeking, though the seeking is inward, it may have a corresponding external, physical, geographical location. And your mind makes those connections. So he had heard from his uncle that there is a great temple in Tiruvannamalai, a Shiva temple. Because Ramana Maharshi was steeped in the Shaiva tradition, the Shaiva mysticism. There are a lot of other mystics in those part of the world, that part of the world. So he was steeped in that tradition. So this one. You see, Maharshi's life gives us a alternate way of looking at the world. A very radically alternate way. We are trained and we are educated, look at the world in a certain way. But there are hundreds of ways of looking at life and interpreting experiences. That's not only one way. So that is what makes Ramana Maharshi's life significant. He helps us, he encourages, he gives us a way of looking at life and the world and our relationship and our experiences from a radically different standpoint. So let me continue the story. He leaves home, takes the train. So he heard from his uncle there is a great temple, Shiva temple, and Shiva is the ultimate refuge of noble people. Finally, their soul reaches the feet of Shiva, lotus feet of Shiva. Like we think of Mount Kailas, taking all the trouble, we go there and look at that mountain, Kailas, and feel spiritually elevated. So Maharshi learns about this temple. So his destination was that temple. He goes to Tiruvannamalai. So this temple was in Tiruvannamalai. Next year when we take the trip, I will take you to Tiruvannamalai, where Maharshi lived and worked. Tiruvannamalai. It's a huge temple, very big temple, stone temple. So he goes there, he reaches the Tiruvannamalai, he had to walk and he has to get off the train. After some time then he had to walk, and some or other finally he reaches there. After reaching there, what he did was he had a shave. He shaved his hair and gave up all that he had. He had a earring, golden earring, he gave it up. And he had a few rupees, he gave it up. And then Sarvatantra Swatantra, totally free from all possessions. These are all very dangerous concepts. How can you live without possessions? How can you live without a bank balance? How can I live without a house? How can I live without a car? How can I live without a washing machine? How can I live without an air conditioner? How can I live without A, B, C, D? It's difficult, even to conceive. But Ramana wanted to live minimally, with minimum things. It's a journey in the minimalistic lifestyle. So he gave up everything he had. And he wore just a one loin cloth. I wouldn't recommend that lifestyle here in Michigan in the winter months. So don't get me wrong. What I am saying is it's an experiment, it's an exploration. It is a journey in living minimally. So you have to make your own choices, depending upon where you live, how you live and all. But it is possible without then the bear also live without anything. They don't possess anything. So it is possible humankind want to live like that. So let's not go into that. So here in South India, it is very hot. It's a tropical country where sun is always there up, except at night. Night also the heat, night also is very hot. It is always hotter and hottest. So Maharshi could manage with just a loin cloth, like Mahatma Gandhi, just a piece of cloth around his waist. That is all what he had. And with that he shook the mightiest and the grandest world power, just by the soul force, as they say. Not by brute force, but by the soul force, the power of truth. He could shake and throw out the greatest power on earth, which Gandhi called the soul force, the force of truth. So Maharshi had a bath in the temple tank and then went into the cellar, basement of the temple. And there he sat. There he simply sat down there, lost in that experience. Because the experience he had at home, lying down, imagining the father's death, is so gripping and overpowering that he wanted to be there. He doesn't want to come out of that space. So I would say Ramana Maharshi, after that, lived as an outsider, outside the world, outside the mind, outside his memory and ego. He lived on the margins of the world, I should say. And he was an ultimate rebel. He was an ultimate rebel. He declared his freedom from the known and lived in the unknown, in uncertainty, ambiguity. So I would call Maharshi as the ultimate rebel. I have not seen any other. Maybe Jesus Christ was a rebel. But Jesus Christ at least had some disciples and the desire to change people. Ramana Maharshi did not even have that desire. He totally abandoned the desire. Totally gave up. Abandoned everything. Anything which you can give up, he wanted to give up. So it was an experiment in giving up. What is called renunciation. Total giving up. So he sat in the cellar room, lost in that experience, which was so mesmerizing, so mystical, so deep, radical, that he didn't get up from that position for 6 months. 6 months sometimes people give him some food or some water, and he hardly ate anything. When you are in deep contemplation, you can live 6 months, 7 months without food. Because the body has enough reserve for 200 days. 200 days reserve is there. Because the body has a reserve of 400,000 calories. And you need only 200 calories just to survive, just to keep the body and the soul together. And there is no much exertion, no thought dissipation. Because most of the energy is dissipated through thinking. Worrying. Thinking is basically worrying. What will happen to the world? Already 7 billion people, another 2 more billion. In 50 years, what will we do now? What will happen to humanity? See? Humanity came into this world not without our permission. It was there, shall be there. But then these kind of worries, unnecessary worries, dissipate your energies. So we feel tired at the end of the day, not because we have done anything substantial, but because we were thinking of doing something. Thinking and doing nothing. That's what. If you are actually doing, you won't get tired. If you are actually doing, you will never get tired. You get tired because you are thinking. So he says, Ramana could sit there for 6 months, no movement whatsoever. Sometimes children throw stones at him. So whether it is a stone or food, and he just lived in that mystic space. What you call Chid Akasham. Chit Akasham. The space of consciousness. Chit Akasham. Physically we are sitting in the outer space, which is called Bhuda Akasham, outer space. When you are imagining, you are sitting in the mental space. But Ramana occupied the spiritual space or consciousness space. That was Ramana. So he sat there. So today I was reading in MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a new department. That new department is called Creating Universal Intelligence of networking people and machines and computers, and to go beyond reason, economics and politics. A new way of looking at the world. This is in the Vatican of Technology, MIT. A new department they have opened. So they say the main the methodology of that department of enquiry will be looking inward, looking inside and creating initiative, new ideas by looking inward and networking, man and machine. Man, I mean people. So such a department has started. So looking inward is becoming a major way of understanding and solving problems. So Ramana Maharshi spent there. He lived in that mystic space or space of consciousness. Not physical space nor mental space, but the space of consciousness. After 6 months, so his nails grew, his hair grew, he didn't brush his teeth. No brushing of teeth. Brushing of teeth is not necessary. These bear and dogs have got beautiful shining teeth. They don't brush. So we have sanitized ourselves to such an extent, and we lost all our immunity, and living has become difficult now. So, whereas in India no sanitation, that is another problem. Here too much sanitation, that creates another problem. So Ramana Maharshi's nails grew, hair grew, he ate very little. After 6 months, he got up, and he was just bones and skin and loose skin, because he was not eating much. And then he walked up the hill. So this temple is on the foothill of Arunachala. Arunachala is the hill. Achala means a hill. Aruna means the morning sun. The morning sun shines upon that hill, and that hill turns golden in the morning. So it is a spectacular sight for people around. So here is a temple, Shiva. There is a hill which is shining in the morning sun. So Ramana used to say there are 3 Shivas in this place, jokingly. Who are the 3 Shivas? One is the Arunachala Shiva. The other is the Arunachala, the mountain. And the third is me, he says. So I am the third Shiva, the self. The self is the third Shiva. So he goes up to the mountain, and there are 2 caves. Even now you can see that, which he occupied. Sometimes he will be on the lower cave or the upper cave. He spent his time. Even now you can go and sit and meditate. I did it. Nancy, I think, did it. Of course, there are some mosquitoes and all you have to tolerate. You have to coexist with the mosquitoes. Biodiversity. Ecological sensitivity. And there was a time we used to use a lot of DDT to wipe out the malarial mosquitoes. But now we find that DDT has caused cancer. Endosulfan, another pesticide. So it is better to coexist with the mosquitoes and snakes and frogs, and rather than destroying all of them and populating the world, and then like a dinosaur we will all perish under our own weight. So Ramana Maharshi lived with animals, peacocks and monkeys and cows and snakes. Even snakes. You won't just kill a snake. In India we don't do that. A snake means snake has got a place, let them stay there. You don't have to go and stamp on the snake. If you stamp on them, of course it will turn and bite. And it will be very deadly. But if you go your way, snake goes its way, snake will not run behind you and bite you like a dog or anything. It has never happened. Never ever. I have seen big snakes, red, golden color and black, and then the hood, and it can stand 6 feet. It can raise up 6 feet and then tower over you, and one look can finish you off. So such is the snake. But then it won't run behind you unless you go and stamp on the snake. So it's a kind of coexistence, diversity, celebrating and enjoying and promoting biodiversity. That's the kind of life Ramana lived. So he spent the rest of his time, 54 years, between these 2 caves. So he wouldn't talk. That is his masterpiece. Ramana's masterpiece is silence. His book has no letters. The book of his life has no words. It's silence. And through silence he healed people. He tried to heal the world just by observing silence, accommodating, tolerating, coexisting. That's how he healed. He was a great healer. People say when I go and sit near him, I felt healed. So he spent 54 years between these two cases, and his usual daily routine was to morning he gets up and go around the mountain. It's a 14 kilometers around the mountain. It takes 2-3 hours. So since he has nothing else to do, so he will every day, he will go around the mountain. Then he will go up the mountain and come down. That's all what he did in his life. Nothing else. Go around, go up and down. What else we are doing? Go around, go up and down. That's all what we do. We don't do anything more. Our mountain is a 10-story building. Go around it, take your car and find a parking space there, then go up and down, up and down. What else have we done in life? So Maharshi also did the same thing. But he enjoyed fresh air. So even now, pilgrims who go to Arunachala or Tiruvannamalai, it's a practice, go around the mountain. Now they have really paved roads. At that time there was not good roads. So Maharshi mastered the art of silence. He would not react to anything. At the same time, he will expose himself to everything. You can go and talk to him. You can go and confide and then express and then, hours together you can go and talk. And as you go on talking, he won't encourage you to talk, but you can talk. And after some time you come to a dead end because there is nothing more to talk. I was born, my parents never took care of me, I had to do this, I did this, then I educated, then I married and I suffered and finally I am sitting in front of you. Now what? Stop. Talk is over. So Maharshi will let you go on and come to a natural end. There begins silence. Now we have nothing more. Now you can only repeat. For that you have to get away from you, go and then again come back, say the same thing. So after 2-3 such sessions, you have nothing more to speak. Your mind also becomes silent. So he was a master of silence, not of words. Though this is a beautiful text, as I read, we will find that. That silence modifies into wonderful words. You'll see that it's so poetic, so feelingful, so soulful. This Kartrurajñaya prapyade bhalam karma kim param karma tachadam kritimaho dadhau padana karanam bhalama shashadam gedi nirodhagam. So beautiful, so mellifluous, all the verses. But his general mode is silence. He is a resident of silence, I would say. And silence is non-reaction. He wouldn't react. Reaction is thought. So that is his, so he will listen. He is like a mirror. So he remained in that state. Some people will give him some food and he lived on that. And then he became like a magnet. He started attracting people. Paul Brandon visited him. Who wrote that book, Serpent Power or Hidden Power or something, Paul Brandon, a great writer. He went all over Himalayas, but he was not, he said so many sages and rishis, but he was not happy. Finally he reaches Ramana. He says, when I saw Ramana Maharshi, I discovered a rare peace, total peace. And then his journey, that was the end of his journey. Paul Brandon. Arthur Osborne, another great Englishman. And he went there and asked him few questions. His main question was, who am I? Ramana Maharshi, again, his tool of self-enquiry is this question, who am I? His tool, his vehicle, his method of self-enquiry is asking this question, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And there is no answer to that question. There is no answer. He wouldn't provide an answer. He will say it will reveal by itself. So it is not a conclusive enquiry, it is an inconclusive enquiry. It's an ongoing enquiry. So who am I? He perfected. He called it a direct method. Marga Arjavad, a direct method. So there you don't have to study much. Otherwise you have to study the Vedas, Upanishad, this, that, so many things have to be studied. But Ramana's method, there is not much study. So these great people came to him, interacted with him, asked questions, and sometimes he may give a word, sometimes he will not say anything. And people say, I got my answers. When I sat in front of him, I got my answers. And Ramana Maharshi also had a very special look. His look will penetrate. It will be like a razor beam. It will go through you because his look is a desireless, unmotivated look. When you look without desire in your mind, it will go through, it will penetrate, it will totally transform you. But if you look with the desire and motivated look, then there will be clash. Because two people looking at each other, there will be clash. But Ramana's look is a laser beam. It will penetrate. It will completely unravel you by that look. Your whole hypocrisy will be revealed. And we are, let us admit it, we are hypocrites. So, but in Ramana's presence, that's why some people cry. You just cry. Which is very difficult. To cry in front of somebody is very difficult. That is why you wear dark glasses, tissue paper. See, you don't want to cry and take out the filth and the garbage which you have been collecting in the system. So there was one great person, a Sanskrit scholar who came to him. His name was Kavyakanta Ganavadi Muni. Like a flower blooms, all bees come towards it. Similarly, when Maharshi attained silence, the silence is very attractive. People will, isn't it? You will wonder, what is he up to? If he talks, he reveals himself. So there is nothing. But if you observe silence, you are wondering, what is he? What is it? So silence is like a black hole. That is, Krishna is black. It's like a black. It is attracting everything. Everything drains into that. So this Kavyakanta Ganavadi Muni, he was a great scholar. Scholars, the problem is they are in eternal doubt. Scholarship is, promoting doubt. What else is scholarship? On the one hand, on the other hand. On the one hand, on the other hand. It can be this way, that way. So your brain is hungry for information. but no transformation in the process. Doubt is good. I am not discouraging, I am not discounting the importance of doubt, but on a certain level. So Maharshi had a certain certainty about things without being verbal about it. So it is not an ideological certainty, it is not a verbal certainty, as though he has arrived. Or he has nowhere to arrive. We don't know why. What is the content of that state of mind? But he had great certainty. So this Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni is a great scholar, Vedic scholar, and he was very popular also. A lot of people followed him. So wherever he goes, there will be 1,000 people. And in India, it's not that difficult. Because there are plenty of people to follow him. So Kavyakanta Ganapati Muni, he a great scholar, great tapasvi. Tapasvi means he underwent a lot of austerities. Austerities mean fasting or sitting or doing yoga and all that. All kind of austerities. But still he was not, he didn't have the feeling of satisfaction. He felt something is missing. The jigsaw puzzle is not solved. It's still something is missing. Some pieces are missing. So he was searching, and finally he heard about Ramana. He comes here. Then he asked a very important question to Ramana. The question was, what is tapas? Tapas is too much exalted in Indian tradition. Tapas means an austere life, a simple life. Or tapas means a life of supreme concentration. It can have several meanings. So, and we have heard, this saint sat for 2000 years, another saint sat for 20,000 years, third saint sat there for 50,000 years. So how is it possible? What is this thing called tapas? And Ramana Maharshi gave a very interesting answer. Tapas is watching the ego, its rise and fall, the appearance and disappearance of the ego. Watching it is tapas, we say. So the ego arises and it subsides. The arising and fading of the ego, let us say. So ego can be called your identity, your idea of the self, or the sense of doership and enjoyership. That's ego. I feel I am doing, I am suffering, I am enjoying. So that I, which is the central hub of your world. So watching the rising and the fading of the I. That is tapas, he says. So you can do it lying down, sitting up or running, whatever. So constantly. And this explanation of tapas satisfied this man. Because he was running around doing a lot of tapas. Sitting and, lying, not eating, not talking, reading 24 hours. All those things, all those kind of hard exercises he was doing, difficult exercise. And Maharshi, when he said that, as though some thick scale fell off from his eyes. And he, for the first time, this great scholar cried. And he says, all my knowledge which I acquired so far has been made redundant with this explanation. All other knowledge is redundant, is meaningless. And then he stayed with him, Maharshi. And because of his scholarship, Maharshi doesn't have any scholarship. He has a vision. But that vision needs words to communicate, express, or to give it to posterity. You need words. So, this Kavyaganda Ganavadi Muni helped Maharshi to compose this text. So, Maharshi wrote this text in Tamil. And Kavyaganda Ganavadi Muni rendered it to Sanskrit. So what we are reading here is a Sanskrit rendition of the original words written originally in Tamil. Tamil, as you should know, is a very old language. Very old language, like Hebrew, very old language. Very old language. And it's a very beautiful language. Very beautiful language. And Tamilian can speak for hours, 8 hours. One thing, it is very hot. The place is very hot. I find in hot countries, people speak more than cold countries. Go to Sweden or Norway or Finland or Denmark, people speak very little. Because they don't want to open the mouth and lose the energy. In Tamil Nadu, people never close the mouth. Because unless you open the mouth, you don't feel the coolness. So, Maharshi wrote it in Tamil and Kavyaganda Ganavadi Muni translated into Sanskrit. So, the name of the text. So, that's all about Maharshi. And Maharshi attained Mahasamadhi in 1950. He had cancer of the upper arm and they surgically removed the affected area, but then it didn't help him much. And toward the end, sometime he also used to get impatient, irritated. It was there. And sometime he will scold people, his assistants. So those kind of small irritants were there in his life. But that didn't, it's like it didn't affect his real experience, the enlightened experience. So we can call Ramana Maharshi a truly enlightened being, person. A person who has attained Mahasamadhi, a wise person, a Mukta Purusha, a person who enjoyed natural bliss, who saw the whole world as one web, and who had the largeness of heart to live with different life forms and different set of creatures. He had the largeness of heart. He never fought. He never won battles. And hence he never lost any battle. He was beyond success and failure. He beyond profit and loss. So that was his life. I don't expect all of us to follow his lifestyle. But we have a counterpoint or a standard of spiritual life in him. A standard. And we all have to make our own choices. But Ramana Maharshi is the absolute standard. Mahatma Gandhi was another standard. But Ramana Maharshi is one standard which we can follow. So, then slowly Ramana and ashram grew around him. People started coming. And Ramana wrote these wonderful spiritual textbooks. So there are 3 important texts that he has written. One is Upadesa Saram, and beautiful, very beautiful. The other is called Sad Darshanam. Sad Darshanam. Vision of truth. Sat means truth. Darshana means vision. the vision or experience of truth. There are 40 verses in that. Beautiful verses. Sat pratyaya kinnu vihaya santam hridyesha chindara hido hridakya kadham smarama tamameyamegam tasya smriti tatra dridhaiva nishtha. That's one sloka from Saddarshan. Beautiful verses, 40 such verses. Then he has written a Gita, a Ramana Gita, his thoughts into a Gita, a composition. But of all these composition, this is the most popular and important, this particular text. That's why we have taken it up. This has got 30 verses. 30 verses. That's it. Why should you need more? Just 30 verses. It begins with Karturajñaya prapyade bhalam karma kim param karma tachadam. That's how it begins. Then it goes on and on. 30 verses. Upadesa Saram means essence. Upadesha means teaching. The essential teaching. Meaning all the teachings of the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, the Mahabharata, and other darshanas, everything condensed, everything distilled. Maharshi brought this out of his own personal experience. Not from memory, but from experience. Like Deepak Chopra said, Ayurveda is a product of universal consciousness. Not Hindus, but universal consciousness. One way it is true. But the universal consciousness expressed through the Hindu historical experience, that also you have to see. So Maharshi spoke direct from the consciousness because he was resident of there. And his words came from there. So he uses Sanskrit. The words are so unstructured. It's a different use of the word. Very precise, very short. And if one word can have several meanings, he will use that word. So it's a very enlightened person use of language. That also we can see in this. So Upadesa Saram means the essence of all the teachings. Essence of his experience, Maharshi's experience. That is what Upadesa Saram is all about. So tomorrow we will, Maharshi discusses all the 4 paths, famous 4 paths in this. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and Raja Yoga. To puncture the ego and jump into the universal consciousness. So what stops your entry into universal consciousness is your ego. The ego has put a big wall around this. And you can puncture that, you can break into that. And then into that dimension of consciousness. So traditionally there are 4 methods. The path of love and compassion, the path of selfless work, the path of disinterested contemplation, and the path of psychophysical training, discipline, or thought control. The purpose of yoga is to control your mind, reduce your thoughts. That's the purpose of yoga, in all the yoga practices. When you stand on your head, you cannot think much. You cannot think, will Obama be elected next time? You are standing on your head. Can you think like that? Or when you hold your breath for few seconds, there is no thought. When you jump into a well and you are plunging into the depth of the well, water all over you, can there be any thought? Or when you are running fast, can there be any thought? Or when you see a snake suddenly in front of you, Will there be any thought? Or somebody brings a gun and points at your head. Will there be any thought? So yoga is essentially to reduce thought. And if possible, no thought. And when there is no thought, you can touch the ground, the very foundation of everything. Thereafter, from there you may entertain thought. That is a different story altogether. That's a different kind of thinking. So Maharshi employs all these four paths and in this 30 verses. Bhakti Yoga, path of love and compassion, forgiveness and forgetting and forgiveness, forgiving and forgetting and forgiving.com. It's a very funny. It cannot be reduced to .com. You have to practice that. So that path, the path of love and compassion. So all these paths are described here by Ramana Maharshi. And we will see that tomorrow, morning and evening session. And so I don't expect any Sanskrit knowledge from your side. And but unfortunately, these are all written in Sanskrit. So my job is to make you familiar with the Sanskrit sound, which is beautiful, which is your original language. Yours and mine original language is Sanskrit. We all came from the same region, except the Chinese and the Arabs. They came from different region. But we all came from the same region, Indo-Aryans. So somewhere deep down you will find some affinity to these words. So it will be a regress into your past lives. So there is nothing to be scared. You will be visiting your original home. That's it. So whether you know the language or not doesn't matter. I factor that into my discourses. So what is more important is to give you a vision of the self. That's our purpose. A vision, an understanding of the self. And Ramana Maharshi effectively uses the language of silence. So by balancing silence and words, we will try to reach the... So that is for today. And so I will just read some of these slokas. Take the book and... Kartrurajnaya. Can you read that? Kartrurajnaya prapyate bhalam karma kim param karma tajjadam kridimaho dadhau Padanakaranam Phalamashashwadam Gyadinirodhagam Kridimaho dadhau Padanakaranam Phalamashashwadam Gyadinirodhagam Ishwararpidam Nechayakridam Chittashodhagam Mukti Sadhagam. That is one set of thought. One line of thought in those three verses.